Hi, okay, we're going to talk about arrays and just the very basics of it. I'm working in Visual Studio 2012 and I've just created a console application so we can print out stuff. First of all, get the idea that we can declare an array, but it is different from initializing an array. So we could declare an array like that, and then we could initialize it this way. So just to go through this, this is of type int, and this is the name of the array, and I've decided it's going to store, when I'm initializing it, it's going to store, say, 5 objects. So if I do my array equals new int 5. So if I just say that. So what we could do is we can just say, right, I'm going to create 5 objects, and by default every one of those items stored in there will be 0. Another way of doing it is, if we just highlight that out, we can also give it initial values. So if I go x u, so what I've done here is I've created my new array. I've created 5 spaces in the array, and I've actually given each space a value. So that's just another way of creating an array. So you get the idea that declaring an array just says you're going to make an array with a name and of type. And then when you initialize the array, then that's the time you actually give it values. So there is another way of doing this as well. We can declare and initialize the array, just to confuse you. So we'll hide this. We'll use it down here. And this is usually how you will see an array declared and initialized at the same time. And of course, conversely, you can also do this, declare it that way as well. Okay, so say if we'll just go with what we've got there, and I just want to see if I can run this and debug. So how you run and debug is you need a breakpoint. So while this code is running, it'll stop. But we'll just write this one, console dot readline, and we'll just put a breakpoint here, just in case I fall through this by mistake. And it'll stop here, and we can still see the value here. So if I just go debug and start debug, so that's different from build. Build is just going to, well, it's actually just going to give us a console, but we actually want to see what's in the code as it's running, so we need to use debug. So we go start debug, and then we can have a look at what the array actually looks like. Okay, so we've stopped here, and we will just jump on, we'll just do a step over. Okay, so it's there, stop there, and the reason why I did that was so that I could see the array that's been created. So if you can see what I just did, I literally just hovered over here and the little plus symbol came up, and you can see now the array has 3, just like it has there. Whoops. And then it has 5, just like it has there. And very end 3, just like it has there. So that's quite a nice way to be able to have a look at the array in action. Okay, so we'll just stop that again. Now the next thing to do, most important thing to do in an array, we'll just get rid of those little breakpoints. Next thing to do in an array is we use a structure called a loop to loop through all the elements in the array. And there's 2 ways to do it. We can either use a for loop or a while loop. So, and there are two types of for. So I should say for loop for each and a while loop. So we'll just show you the for loop. And what you have to do in a loop is you have to have your initial value, then the value that you're going to loop until, and then you need something that's going to increment the value. So first of all, we call int I equals 0. So that's our start off value. And that means we're going to use that to start and get that first number there. So an int I is less than, well, we are going to loop through 5 elements in the array, and the array starts at 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, 0 to 4 will be 5 elements, so it'll be less than 5. And that is one of the biggest errors in arrays, is that people say this is less than or equal to 5. And that will cause you an array out of bounds exception error. So this is what we do. Then I plus plus. So this means that every time I loop through here, I'm going to increment by 1. And that's what that plus plus means. So we do our brackets, and we are going to print out. Oops. So what we're doing is using the I value, and we're putting it inside the array, and that there means it's going to access whatever value here is. So if that's I is 1, it's going to access that value there. And I've just got it printing out to screen, so if I just run that, you can see what's happening. So this console.write line, the first thing I did was I put in a bit of text, and I also put in the value I, so that I could see at each stage what was happening, what was printing out. So you can see here, oh, maybe I should have left a space in there. My array 0 is 3, my array 1 is 5, 2 is 6, exactly what we have here, and 4 and 3 and so on. Okay. Maybe that'll look a bit better. Okay, so let's have a look just at the while loop. So while is a bit different. We have a do while, or you could just have a single while loop. So we'll just try the while. While I is less than, oops, in fact, we won't use I because we've used I already. We use J. Well, J is less than 5. So that's just like that statement there. But we have to declare it up here. So int J equals 0. And that's like writing that piece of code there. So you can see the while loop is a bit more, it's a bit longer to write. Whereas a for loop is a nice one-line statement. So we declare int J, while J is less than 5, keep in the loop. And there's your loops inside here. And while we're in the loop, we'll just do the same thing as this. Nothing fancy. Instead of I, we will use J instead. So now, when I run this, I will say for loop. Just so now you can watch it printing out. And we go run. Oh, you can see what's happening. I missed out something. So it's in a continual loop, and that's what it looks like when it's in a continual loop. Okay, so I never actually incremented j. So j has been 0 all the time, and that's why it was an infinite loop. And here is the key, j plus plus. So now j is incrementing. And now when we go start, now you can see it's no longer an infinite loop, it has an endpoint, and it prints out the 5 values in the array 0 to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's the 5 elements in the array, and that's exactly what you've got in there. Okay, so now we've done our while loop, and let's do the for each. So slightly different syntax. And again, we have to give it a count value. So we'll have to increment it like we did here, because it doesn't work like this. So with jk, so we'll say int k equals 0. And that will be our incrementer. And what we say is for every int element in the array. So we're going to use that element just like we used j in here. And instead of this, you use element like that. And of course we need to increment it. So we have actually, take that back. We don't need the incrementer because the element is just going to print out. The only reason I would do that is because I wanted to print out 0, 1 like all the rest. Okay, so no, maybe we will just, so you don't actually have to have that. It's just because the way I wanted to print it out. So that'll print out the 0, 1, 2, 3 part of it. So I'll just show you that working. And that's for each. Okay. So you can see the for each loop. Oh, what have I done again? I haven't incremented. Okay. Okay, so now we can see my array, the k value is being incremented as we go, but you can see in the for each element, I don't need that incrementer, whereas I did need it in this loop because I was actually using the j value, whereas now what I'm doing is saying get me each element in the array, and the for each element is doing the incrementing, and it's getting the value. And that's the big difference between these, is that you're not using the array and you're not passing in a counter value. It actually gets you the value of the array within the first line of the statement, which I have to say is quite a nice feature. And just as an aside on this, if you are into mobile development, I think this, I'm told that this statement actually runs 2 times faster than a normal for loop. So it's a good idea to know about this structure. Okay, hopefully that's been of help.